Transplant, an extract from the anthology Ultimate Shades of Horror by John Wing. He ran and ran and ran. Through a jungle, or was it a forest? He couldn't be sure, but he thought it was the former. He was incredibly agile, so unbelievably quick. He darted this way and that. He jumped over fallen trees and streams with the ease of a gazelle. His legs had an impetus of their own. He couldn't stop them, nor did he want to. He revelled in his athleticism. He was alive unlike ever before. It was like being reborn. It was exciting, wondrous, magnificent. He was a god among men. And he ran and ran and ran. He could feel the beating of his heart, but it didn't struggle. His breathing wasn't laboured. He hardly broke out into a sweat. His body wasn't aching or showing any sign of fatigue whatsoever. It was extraordinary. He looked down at himself. He was naked. His legs were long, strong and firm. His generous manhood flopped wildly as he sprinted. His torso was solid and taut. His chest thrust forward, covered in fine black hair. He was a magnificent specimen of a man. Even Hercules would envy his body. He was healthy, not restrained by frailty and disease. He was free, and he ran and ran and ran. The jungle was never ending. Its aliveness smothered him. Birds, monkeys, insects, you name it, their cacophonous voices spurred him on as he raced through the undergrowth. He arched his neck up to see the trees stretching high up into the distance, as if in homage to the sun, whose rays sliced through the canopy of leaves and branches, sprinkling pockets of pools of golden light on the ground below. It was a marvellous sight to behold, and impossible as it may seem, it encouraged him to run even faster. He was intoxicated by this new unstoppable energy that he now possessed, and he ran and ran and ran. Although his bare feet struck firm ground, be it stones, fallen branches, dead leaves and insects, none of them hurt him. He didn't even have any cuts or scrapes on his skin. His body was impervious to its environment. He was invincible. But even the gods themselves need sustenance. He had the desire to drink. He must quench his thirst. Ahead of him was a stream. He bounded over to it in 3 leaps and crouched at the stream's edge. He drank and drank, oblivious to his surroundings, enjoying the coolness and freshness of the water as he gulped it down. He needed that. Only when he had satisfied his thirst did he look up. That's when he saw them. How many of them were there? 10, 12, 15? He figured at least 18. 18 gorillas, all bigger than him, stronger than him, and every one of them watched him intensely. They didn't move. They hardly breathed. They just scrutinized him. But it was their eyes that intimidated him. He could see in them arrogance, disdain, even anger. Their poise, their silence, their stare signified malicious intent. He was a threat to them. He had to be eliminated. A silverback, the obvious leader, the heaviest and tallest of them all, stood up from its haunches. He thumped his mighty chest several times while giving out the most startling, raucous yell that devastated the jungle into submission, as all other animal sounds immediately ceased. Then, to his utter astonishment, the silverback pointed at him and spoke. It actually spoke. "Kill him." In unison, all 18 gorillas sprang from their haunches, leaping across the stream, determined to slaughter the human. And he ran and ran and ran. The maniacal screams of the apes reverberated in his brain as they charged towards him, their paws pounding the ground like thunder, seemingly making the earth tremble. It was the fear that spurred him on. His legs were like the pistons of a locomotive. They refused to stop. On and on he kept running. Everything else was a blur around him as he dodged and ducked between trees and branches. He jumped, twisted and turned sharply, avoiding holes, stumps and mounds. The pursuing animals appeared ever closer as they barged through any obstacle in their way. He really believed he could feel their very breath on his sweat-soaked skin. Where before he had run for the exhilaration, now he was running for fear of his life. The leader of the pack exclaimed again, "Kill him!" The acclamation drove them on more energetically than ever, their hammering feet stomping on the ground like incessant drums banging in his head. He thought they must surely be on top of him. He had to look. They were nearly within arm's grasp of him. He wasn't going to make it. One of the gorillas suddenly leapt off the ground, lunging high in the air. His eyes were locked onto this beast, whose acrobatic feat seemed to be happening in slow motion as its massive bulk engulfed his vision and plummeted down towards him. Then he tripped, as if the ground had unexpectedly vanished beneath his feet. He fell and fell and fell. His body uncontrollably gyrated as his arms and legs flayed wildly as he spun head over heels down a steep embankment, landing in what felt like minutes but in truth was only seconds at the bottom of a ravine with a heavy crunching thump. Dazed and confused and in obvious pain, he managed to look up, only to find, standing fully upright, towering in front of him, the silverback that had ordered his death. And it spoke. "Mr. Reeve?" Had he heard right? It had called him by name. Surely that couldn't be. But there was no mistaking it, because the gorilla spoke again, clearer and with more emphasis on his surname. "Mr. Reeve?" What was happening? None of it made sense. He was losing his mind. For a third time the voice spoke, but now it was calm, gentler. In fact, it was familiar, but he couldn't quite put a name to the two words. "Mr. Reeve?" He opened his eyes. Everything was blurred. He closed them and opened them again. He could see movement, a shape, though nothing recognizable. He closed his eyes once more. "Mr. Reeve?" He raised his eyelids. The shape took substance. A face peered down at him. He knew that face. It was... He couldn't quite remember. It was on the tip of his tongue. "Mr. Reeve, welcome back." Then it hit him. He knew who it was. It was Dr. Lombardi. Now he recalled where he was and what had happened to him. He wanted to say something, but words were difficult to articulate. What, he began. The doctor placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Do not worry, Mr. Reeve. The operation was 100% success." They had done it. He had a new body. He wanted to see. He attempted to move. "You must keep absolutely still. Do not move a muscle. Your head and new body still need more time to, what shall I say, become one." He so desperately wanted to look. All he could see was Lombardi's face and the white ceiling, nothing else. But he knew he must err on the side of caution. He had come this far. The last thing he wanted to do was ruin everything because of his impatience. "You are a very lucky man, Mr. Reeve. Soon, very soon, you will see the result of what medical science has achieved. Truly incredible." If he could have, Reeve would have smiled. No, he would have jumped for joy. He felt different. He felt new and alive, more alive than he had in years. No longer was he trapped in a useless, decrepit shell of a man. No, he was youthful once more. He could tell this body was healthy and full of vitality. He ached to test it like a new car, to be able to run, jump and admire his physique. But the doctor had strongly advised against any movement, and reluctantly he lay there, motionless, like a mannequin. He had to bide his time. It would be worth the wait. Patience, William. Patience. It won't be long now. You have been in a coma for 4.5 months, and the healing is nearly complete. 1 more month should do it. Another month? Thought Reeve. I have to wait another month? It was too long. He couldn't wait that long. He wouldn't. Reeve felt a pinprick on his neck. They're injecting me with something. He didn't want to be put back to sleep. Only another month, Mr. Reeve. While you're in a coma this time, we will administer electric shocks to stimulate the spinal cord and so strengthen the connections between your head and new body. And then you'll be able to familiarise yourself with your new body. It will all... The doctor's words were receding. His face was blurring, just an unidentifiable shape, and the ceiling, it stretched into the distance like a motorway reaching into the horizon as his eyes slowly closed and everything went black. The 9.5 million Dassault Falcon 900 jet touched down on the private strip in the middle of the Dubai desert at 11 a.m. When the plane came to a complete stop, the hatch door opened to allow Antonio Lombardi and Edward Kane to alight. Greeting them at the bottom of the stairs was Sheikh Mohammed Rashid Al Nahyan, worth a conservative estimate of $4.6 billion. Beneath his headdress, he wore a loose, dark robe trimmed with beautiful gold embroidery on top of his white thobe that reached down to his ankles. 2 bodyguards stood slightly behind him to the left and right. The Sheikh and Lombardi greeted one another. "You have the cargo?" queried the 55-year-old bearded Sheikh in perfect English. "Safe and sound," replied the doctor. "Good. I hope I've spent my 5 million wisely." "You won't be disappointed," assured Lombardi. "Then let us take a short journey back to my palace." The 2 men got into a waiting silver Rolls-Royce, driven by the Sheikh's chauffeur, while the 2 bodyguards followed in their black Mercedes. Edward Kane stayed behind to supervise the unloading of the precious equipment. 3 hours later, Kane informed the doctor that the consignment had been transferred and that everything was now ready. Lombardi was very content. Here he sat, in pure opulence, as an honoured guest of the Sheikh's, as a much wealthier man. He smoked upon a Don Collins cigar and pondered on the last few weeks. He had successfully transferred Reeve's head onto a new body and was £10 million richer. And then after negotiations with the Sheikh, he was a further $5 million richer, having agreed to accommodate Reeve at the Arab's abode. He had dined with the Sheikh and by the end of the evening had reached another agreement to find a woman who would be a suitable companion for Reeve. If he could do this, he would be another £8 million in pocket. Things couldn't be better. He finished his cigar, went to the bathroom, and then slipped naked into the king-size bed. Tomorrow, the unveiling would take place, and the Sheikh's entourage, and more importantly, family and respected business partners would be there for the momentous occasion. Antonio Lombardi switched off the nearby bedside table lamp, a very happy man, and slept peacefully through the night. If you're intrigued how this story continues, it is available to download from Amazon in my anthology, Ultimate Shades of Horror.